All right, so now we're going to continue with our organelles, and we're going to focus on the mitochondria. Some of you may have heard, maybe remember from biology, the mighty mitochondria. So our mitochondria, and some cells have lots of mitochondria and some cells don't have very many mitochondria. It just depends on their energy needs. So the mitochondria, of course, is going to give the cell energy. And when we think energy in anatomy, we want to think ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So the function of the mitochondria is to create ATP energy. This process is known as cellular respiration. And some of you may have had a biology course and you may remember what cellular respiration is. It can be very, very complicated. So I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible for you and just pull out the key parts that I want you to know. So we're looking at a mitochondria. We've cut into it so you can see all these different parts of the mitochondria. So let me look at this other picture that I want you to see. All right, so what you're looking at here, it looks a little complicated, but you've got the cytoplasm. We're not seeing all those other structures, not seeing the nucleus, etc. And we're looking here, this is just the mitochondria. So we basically have everything outside of the mitochondria here, and then we've got this. I know this looks complicated, just bear with me just a second. And I'm just going to hide this, and I will go back and answer those questions with you on your little sheet. Okay, so what we've got here is something called glycolysis. So when your body needs energy, it starts with the glucose molecule, starting with that the glucose molecule, sugar, and then it goes through this process called glycolysis. We're not going to learn all the steps of glycolysis. If you've had a biology class, you may have done that. I don't care that you know that. Okay, so if you'll notice here in glycolysis, this is taking place outside of the mitochondria. So outside of the mitochondria, we are getting 2 ATPs here. Just 2. So in the cytoplasm, the cell is able to get 2 ATPs, energy molecules for you. Okay. Now if you have oxygen, you will then go this direction and will end up in the mitochondria, but we're not going to talk about that yet. We're going to talk about going this way. Let's say we have no oxygen. So we don't have any oxygen, we don't have enough oxygen. We enter in a phase called anaerobic respiration. Cellular respiration is the overall term, but if we have no oxygen, we put A in it in front of it. That means not. Aerobic means oxygen, so not oxygen respiration. We end up going this pathway. Now, we're human, so we do not make alcohol, but there's some organism, bacteria and stuff, yeast, they can make alcohol through fermentation. What our body makes, if we don't have any alcohol, we make lactic acid. And so have you ever been working out and all of a sudden you get these cramps in your muscles, or the next day your muscles were really, really sore? That's because lactic acid had built up in your cells, and especially your muscle cells, and that's where that pain is coming from. So that's because you don't have enough oxygen. I don't know if you've ever run, but your coaches a lot of times will tell you raise your arms if you're starting to get that side cramp, whatever. You're not breathing right, you're not getting enough oxygen, and because you're requiring lots of energy if you're running. But if we don't have oxygen, we go this pathway. So do you see in this pathway any more ATPs? The answer is no. So the most we get if there's no oxygen is 2 ATP molecules. See, that's the most we can get. Okay, so if we have oxygen, we go this direction, and then it gets a little bit more complicated. And if you again have had a biology course, you might have had to do the Krebs cycle and all that stuff. We're not going to do that. We're just going to know that if you've got oxygen, now we've got the mitochondria involved. And that is where the majority of our ATP is going to be made. All right. So this first step that we've got going on here, we got the Krebs cycle that will happen. And you'll notice here, we're in the mitochondria. We're getting 2 more ATPs being made. And then it goes through something called the electron transport chain, and then we get 34 ATP made. And it actually is, that they wrote on this PowerPoint that I stole from the internet somewhere, it really is somewhere between 32 and 34. It's more of a range in this depending on. So can you see that it's going to be a lot more beneficial to have oxygen? We're going to get 2 here. We're going to get 2 here, and somewhere between 32 and 34 there. So for every one of our glucose molecules. So the reason we call this the mitochondria, it gives us a lot of our ATP energy. All right, let's see if we can answer those questions then together. And so where does glycolysis take place? It takes place in the cytoplasm. Okay, how many ATPs were made during glycolysis? You had 2 ATPs made during glycolysis. So what is anaerobic respiration? That means without oxygen. Okay, what builds up in your muscles if you don't have oxygen? You get lactic acid, and it does cause pain in your muscles. Okay, so what is the total ATPs that you get from anaerobic respiration without oxygen? Well, we got 2 during glycolysis. That's the only time we make ATP if you don't have oxygen. So you do get 2, but that's all you get. All right, makes sense? All right, so what is aerobic respiration? Well, that means with oxygen present. Where does that take place? That takes place in the mitochondria. How many ATPs do you get from the Krebs cycle? I could go back to that picture, but 2 ATPs. All right. And then the electron transport chain, the next part of this little story, you get somewhere between 32 ATPs to 34 ATPs. It is a range depending on the cell. So, and this should say how many total are made. So when you say total, I'm meaning starting with the glycolysis and going. So if you think about it, let's if we're doing a respiration. So where are we going to get? First is glycolysis. Both of them have glycolysis. Where does glycolysis take place? Cytoplasm. So how many are we getting there? We're getting 2. So we'll do ATPs. All right. The next is called the Krebs cycle. And you get 2 ATPs there. And then you have the electron transport chain. I'm sorry that this is so complicated. And so you get a range of 32 to 34. So now if we add those up, we're going to get a range of 36 to 38 ATPs. Much more beneficial with the aerobic respiration. All right, last thing is the formula. So that was 36 to 38 ATPs. So we're going to do, this is on your Unit 1 test, aerobic respiration. So you start with glucose. Glucose is C6H12O6. That's glucose. You need oxygen. That's for us to breathe. So glucose plus oxygen is going to make carbon dioxide, CO2. And water. And so to balance these, you've got a 6 in front of all 3 of these. 6 in front of oxygen, 6 in front of carbon dioxide, 6 in front of water. This is cellular respiration. It's one of your essays from the Unit 1 test. Okay, what we're going to now add to it over here, 6 to 38 ATPs. That is a product of cellular respiration. Just to recap, this is your reactants. This is your products, and this means yield. Just to kind of review that. All right, see you on the next video.